This morning, you woke up and made a decision. You decided to check your phone. You decided what to wear. You decided what to eat for breakfast. It felt like you. It felt like your mind, wide awake, weighing options and choosing freely. But here is the strange part. Your brain may have already made that decision before you knew it was happening, before the you that feels in charge ever showed up. Sit with that for a second. What if the version of you that experiences choosing is always a few steps behind the choice itself? You like to believe you are the author of your life. Every meal, every relationship, every career move feels like a product of careful thought. You compare options, you weigh pros and cons, you decide. That is the story your mind tells you over and over, thousands of times a day. And it is a good story. It is just not the whole story. In the early 1980s, a neuroscientist named Benjamin Libet ran an experiment that would quietly unsettle the entire field of psychology. He asked people to sit in front of a clock and, whenever they felt like it, flick their wrist. Simple enough. But while they did this, Libet was recording their brain activity. He wanted to know exactly when the decision to move actually happened. Here is where it gets strange. The brain showed a distinct buildup of electrical activity, a signal called the readiness potential, before people reported consciously deciding to move. Not after, before, sometimes by several hundred milliseconds. Your brain, in other words, appeared to start the process of acting before your conscious mind had caught up to the choice. Now, half a second may not sound like much, but think about what it implies. It suggests that the feeling of choosing is not the starting gun of an action. It might be something closer to the announcement of a decision that was already underway. Decades later, in 2008, a researcher named John-Dylan Haynes pushed this even further. Using brain imaging technology, his team found patterns of neural activity that could predict which button a person would press, left or right, up to 10 seconds before the person consciously felt they had decided. 10 seconds. In the world of the brain, that is an eternity. You might be tempted to dismiss this. Button presses are trivial. Real decisions, the ones that matter, surely feel different. But the deeper unsettling truth is that this same architecture, this same lag between brain and awareness, is quietly present in far more decisions than you realize. Think about the last time you chose a restaurant, or picked a show to watch, or decided who to trust with a secret. It felt deliberate. But underneath that feeling, your brain was running calculations you never consciously accessed. Memory of past experiences, emotional associations, social cues. All of it was processed before the polished, conscious version of the decision arrived and took a bow. Your emotions play a far larger role in decision-making than most people admit. The neuroscientist Antonio Damasio studied patients with damage to a brain region connected to emotional processing, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. What he found was surprising. These patients could still reason logically. They could still list pros and cons with perfect clarity, but they struggled to actually make decisions. Without emotional input, choice itself became almost impossible. Not because logic failed them, but because logic alone was never enough. This means the story you tell yourself, that you are a rational agent carefully weighing evidence, is incomplete. Emotion is not the enemy of decision-making. It is one of its essential engines. You do not decide despite your feelings. You decide because of them, whether you notice it or not. And then there are the forces you cannot see at all. Cognitive biases. Mental shortcuts your brain uses to move fast through a complicated world. The psychologist Daniel Kahneman spent decades mapping these patterns, work that eventually earned him a Nobel Prize. He showed that humans are not the careful calculators they imagine themselves to be. Instead, people rely on fast, automatic thinking far more often than slow, deliberate reasoning. Kahneman called these two systems System 1 and System 2. System 1 is instinctive, quick, emotional. System 2 is slow, effortful, logical. Most of your daily decisions, the ones you barely notice making, come from System 1, the fast one, the one running quietly in the background. Why does this matter? Because it means your sense of deliberate control is often a story added after the fact. Your brain acts. Then, your mind explains. You are not always the author of the decision, sometimes you are the narrator, describing something that already happened. Now think about how easily that fast, automatic system can be nudged. Marketers know this well. Store layouts are designed to guide your eyes and your hand before your conscious mind ever weighs in. The placement of a product at eye level, the scent pumped into a store, the specific shade of red on a limited time label. None of it forces you to buy anything, but all of it tilts the odds, quietly, beneath your awareness. Social pressure works the same way. In the 1950s, the psychologist Solomon Asch ran a now famous experiment. He placed a single real participant in a group of actors who all confidently gave an obviously wrong answer to a simple visual question. Astonishingly, many participants changed their own correct answer just to match the group. Not because they were told to, because something in them, some deep social wiring, quietly overrode their own perception. They believed they were still deciding freely. But the room had already decided for them. So, where does this leave you? Are you nothing but a puppet, pulled by neurons, emotions, and social currents you cannot see? Not exactly. This is where the science gets genuinely interesting, not despairing. Most researchers today do not claim that free will is a complete myth. What they suggest instead is more nuanced. Consciousness may not initiate every decision, but it appears to play a critical role in something else, something researchers call veto power. You may not always consciously start an impulse, but you often have the ability to stop one. Libet himself, the scientist behind that original wrist-flicking experiment, proposed exactly this idea. He called it free won't. Even if the readiness potential begins before awareness, there remains a brief window in which the conscious mind can intervene and cancel the action. You feel the urge to say something sharp in an argument. That urge may have brain activity behind it before you notice it. But the choice to hold your tongue, to pause, to override the impulse, that still belongs to you. This reframes the entire question. Maybe free will was never about being the origin of every impulse. Maybe it is about being the editor, the one who reviews the draft your brain writes and decides in that narrow window whether to publish it or tear it up. Consider how this plays out in your own daily life. A craving for something unhealthy might fire in you automatically, shaped by habit, hormones, and past reward patterns. You did not consciously choose to want it, but you can consciously choose whether to act on it. That gap, small as it is, may be where your real agency lives. This also explains why habits are so powerful and so hard to break. Every time you act on autopilot, you are letting the fast system run the show uninterrupted. Every time you pause, notice the impulse and choose differently. You are exercising that narrow, precious window of conscious override. It is not glamorous. It rarely feels dramatic. But neurologically, it might be the closest thing to genuine free will that you actually have. There is also a broader question lurking underneath all of this. If decisions are shaped so heavily by biology, environment, and unconscious processing, how much should people be held responsible for their choices? Legal scholars and neuroscientists continue to debate this. Some worry that emphasizing the unconscious roots of decision-making could be used to excuse harmful behavior. Others argue that understanding these mechanisms actually creates more compassion, more room for rehabilitation, more nuance in how society treats mistakes. The science does not offer a clean answer. It offers a more honest, more complicated picture of what it means to choose. None of this means you should stop trusting your judgment. It means understanding it more clearly. Your decisions are not purely rational, and they are not purely random either. They emerge from a dense web of memory, emotion, culture, biology, and a sliver of conscious oversight sitting quietly on top of it all. That sliver may be smaller than you thought, but it is not nothing. So the next time you make a choice, Notice the moment just before you act. That tiny pause. That flicker of awareness right before the decision locks in. Some of the work was already done before you arrived, but that pause, however brief, is still yours. It may be the smallest room in your mind, but it might also be the only one you truly own. And maybe that is the real answer to the question you started with. Every choice you make isn't entirely yours, but the choice to notice, to pause, to override, that part still is.